I'm a dude, and I'm inviting you to join me on a podcast about brews.
Does that include stouts?
Yes, of course it includes stouts. Like I was saying, join us every Saturday on the journey into...
Wait a minute. Do you guys do anything about like IPAs?
Yes,
Stuff like that?
yes, we do IPAs.
Okay.
Yes. Anyway, join us on the Journey into Comics Network for Brews with Dudes.
Whoa, hey, have you guys ever... Do you care if I bring some Zima on?
Yes, I care if you bring Zima. Zima doesn't count. Zima's... Dr. Dongo. Anyway, join us every Saturday for a podcast that delves into the craft brew world.
The following is a Journey into Comics Network production.
Hey, this is Josh Richmond, and you are listening to the Voice of Survival podcast, exclusively on the Journey into Comics Network.
You're listening to the Voice of Survival podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your host, Nate Phillips.
What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another episode of the Voice of Survival podcast. This is episode 23. As the introduction said, I am your host, Nate. Hope everybody's doing well this Friday. We are here. We have a very special guest who is one of the few members of the Journey into Comics Network family that has yet to officially be interviewed on this show until today. We're changing that up. But also, in a weird turn of events, this is not his first appearance on the show, as he hosted the show back in April, as strange as that is. So welcome to the show from Podcastrophe, Tyler McLaughlin. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. I've had a really good week with a rough couple of days, and this podcast is long overdue. You know, we've been trying to get it done for a couple months now, so...
Yes, it also is cool because it opens up avenues to do other of our podcasts. Like, my wheels are already turning like, ooh, Journey into Comics stuff. What's going on? Like, we need to get into that.
You know, it's a miracle. I finally bought a computer after not having one for 9 years, so... It's like...
You did good, man.
I called you the other night just to make sure that I remembered how to use a computer, and I was like, wow, I figured out Skype. You know, I'm moving up in the world. But I'm going to be going back to school and shit, so it was time I got a computer.
Dude, you're going through, like, a bunch of changes right now all of a sudden.
Yep.
Like, I don't even know if we want to necessarily start there. We totally can. But, like, when I met you... We know each other through podcasting. Brando, Mike, and the guys from Subaru all kind of picked you up. Really, the first time I heard your name was through Dick. Because Dick's like, there's this guy, and I'm going to get him on my fucking show, and he's going to be my co-host. I don't know if he knows it or not, but he's going to be my fucking co-host. And I'm like, oh, well, if you vouch for him, he must be a great dude, you know? Like, I'm not really sure. And then we met, and, you know, I think at first you were a little bit, like, calm, cool, quiet. You weren't like super exuberant like you are.
I like to be professional. You know,
yeah, you were just like feeling out the situation like you should, you know?
There's a lot of my personality that, you know, the best way to describe me as a person is I'm very abrasive. You know, I can be an asshole, but I can also be the nicest person in the world. It all just depends on what kind of vibe you're sending my direction.
Totally.
And if you know, when I was a kid, I was raised in a kind of a really weird environment. But, you know, everyone is told when they're a kid, well, you need to respect your elders. And that never vibed with me. If you show me respect, I'm going to give you respect. Because you're earning my respect by giving me a little bit. Now, if you respect me and then I truly know that you're a piece of shit, I'm not going to give you, you know, oh, shit.
Oh, I'm still here.
Oh,
I'm not gone.
I had a stupid pop-up.
Oh, a pop-up. That's the most 2000s thing you could say on a podcast.
Like I said, I haven't had a computer since 2009, so this is weird still. But, yeah, so I just, anymore, you know, I'm not old by any means, but now that I'm getting close to that big 30, I've learned to kind of keep my mouth shut when I meet people.
Feel out the situation.
Right, because I don't want to be so boisterous and over the top like I used to be and just instantly remove people from my life that could be really cool, you know?
Yeah, I feel it's interesting that you say that because I definitely the same way. I'm 31 now, and when I was in my early to mid 20s, I was definitely that very exuberant, out there, just in your face guy. Like, hey, what's up? I'm so happy to meet you. Like, how's it going, man? Let's party, you know, or whatever.
Right.
And now, like, it's weird too because now the more things I've done out in the world, the more like closed in I feel. Like I have like really bad anxiety about seeing people and stuff now, you know, like even in normal like life situations, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I don't want to fucking go see any human being, any human person.
Right.
So totally to you, I feel the same thing when meeting new people. I'm like friendly, but I'm not who I am, I guess is the way to say it. It's like a soft version of me.
Well, and, you know, when I was a kid, my grandma always used to say, there's too much meanness in the world. And, you know, like any young kid or teenager, I just ignored it. You know, I'm on top of the world. I'm invincible. You know, just typical naive kid. But now it's like I'm to the point where I'm almost I almost want to put the wall up because I don't want to be taken advantage of.
Totally.
You know? And I'll get into why I've started to be like that a little bit later in the show, but you know, I've been fucked over a lot, and I take care of people that take care of me, and if you're gonna go out of your way to fuck me over, you gotta be a pretty bad fucking piece of shit.
Totally. I don't think my first impression of you was, like I said, you were just really soft. You came off as this like gentle guy who was just like, I'm going to fill out the room and just be patient. But like when we started talking and vibing on nerdy shit, I knew exactly who you were as a person.
Right.
And it's really cool because you're one of the few people, and not that we have to spend any amount of time on this, you're one of the few people who maybe in certain aspects we don't always see eye to eye, but like I respect the fuck out of you as a person. And like it doesn't even matter because when you say your opinion or your view, you never come across as, no, I'm fucking right. You say, here's how I see it. Take what you will. You know what I'm saying? And
right.
that's a thing that not a lot of people even know how to handle anymore.
Well, and that means a lot from you, especially because your political views and my political views are 100% polar opposites 90% of the time. And, you know...
That was a great, totally made-up stat, by the way.
Right.
Thank you.
I mean... You know, whether one of us is wrong on one hand or the other, it doesn't really matter. The fact is that I know I can sit down and have a conversation with you, especially about politics, you know, especially with all the shit going on right now in our political climate. And I know it's not going to turn into a screaming match. You know, it goes back to the respect thing that I was just talking about.
Absolutely.
If you show me enough respect to let me voice my opinion, I have no incentive to not let you voice your opinion. You know, unfortunately I didn't get to be on my own show this week, but I complimented Miranda on her ability to form an opinion and back her opinion up, because we're to the point now in society where people form opinions, they don't have to justify them whatsoever. You hit the nail on the head. My opinion is fact. It is right. And then they don't want to discuss why their opinion may or may not be wrong.
And then really their opinion is like, the thing that I think bothers me the most about the current like climate of the world we live in are headline chasers. People that just post because the headline, and they don't think about what's in the article, or they don't actually read what's beyond the text, because sometimes those headlines are so misleading. They are clickbait for a reason. They are trying to get you in their visual so they get numbers. It's a fucking game. We're all playing it.
Yep. And I'm guilty of it just like anybody. You know, a lot of times I'll read clickbaity headlines, and then it will make me chuckle, so I'll share it. And then it's like, oh, shit.
Didn't read between the lines.
Yeah,
oh,
you know, I'm contributing to the problem because I'm doing exactly what I'm bitching about doing, you know.
Yeah, and sometimes people can get caught in that thing where, like, I share stuff sometimes and I don't say anything because I don't even have an opinion yet. I just want to see what everybody else's fucking opinion is and see like what the view is really in our world. Because sometimes I post stuff that's like, you see crazy videos and you can't believe half the shit you see. I mean, sometimes you can, but other times you can't. And I'm a part-time conspiracy theorist, I think. I'm definitely not full-time.
Right.
So you have to be leery of everything, but I just try to like, one thing I again appreciate about you is you definitely bring facts to back up what you're saying.
I try
to. Go here,
anyway.
read this. You know, and I love that. And another thing that's cool is that like the reason that your opinion is how you see it, and I will never be able to change that and vice versa, is because our journeys, and this is the whole reason for the show today, our journeys are so different.
Right.
You've lived a life that I literally in no chance could ever imagine going through. Like, I don't even know your full story, but the bits and pieces I've got from listening on Podcastrophe, because I'm an avid fan of that show, I don't give a fuck that it's on my network.
We always appreciate the Pod Daddy coming and blessing the show.
Man, yesterday I got caught up. I watched the whole entire live stream because I was so baffled that Miranda was on, and she just slayed across the board.
Yeah, Miranda did a good job.
Like, I don't mean to just like all of a sudden offshoot brag. That's not why we're here. But where does your journey actually like start? I guess is like, are you born in Indiana? Is this just a happenstance of a place you ended up, or?
So I was born in Augsburg, Germany. My mom and dad were both in the service. My mom's from Lafayette. My mom's family's from Indiana. My dad's family's from Virginia. And so my parents met in the military. I was born at the hospital my mom worked at in Germany. I lived in Germany for almost 4 years, and then my parents decided to split up. And during that time frame, my mom and dad both had to PCS back to Virginia. So that's a personnel change of station. So normally every 3 to 5 years, the military forces you to move. You know, if you want to be promoted or continue your career, like, here, move here, and then
go up the ladder. You're literally going up the ladder
Right.
by where people open up the position.
Correct. So, and it keeps you fresh in your career. That's why they do it. But anyway, so we went back to Virginia, and then my parents split up. My dad decided to stay in the military, and my mom got out. My dad actually won full custody of me, and the judge that presided over the case gave my mom no contact. So my mom was to never see me again, ever, because my mom's a piece of shit. And so my dad, being a single parent in the military, going back overseas, possibly being deployed, you know, there was during that time period, it was the Bosnia, Kosovo, you know, it was the Clinton administration, so we were doing everything in Eastern Europe that we could. And then obviously right after Operation Desert Storm, so we've got to manifest destiny everywhere.
Exactly,
And,
yeah.
So my dad gave my mom agreed to joint custody, knowing that my mom would dump me off on her parents, knowing that I would have a safe place to live where I could get a good education, and then I would just spend half of the year with him. So I'd do 50-50.
Okay, so he ultimately, for you, probably made a tough choice that fucking wrecked him. I mean, you're a parent now. I'm sure you emotionally envision having to make that same kind of decision, and
Right.
it just is not even a thought. You can't even think.
Well, and
like
it's
that.
one of the things that I preach about on Podcastrophe, just when I talk about people, just the American populace, our quality of life, why we are the way that we are. And one thing, you know, Blaine 2 weeks ago on the show talked about how when he was a teenager, he was already thinking about getting married and having a family. And I think I started to go down my version of that, and I got sidetracked. But when I was a teenager, it was the complete opposite. It was, I don't want a family. My view of family is very different than most people's, just because of the way that I was raised. And
I'm gonna
wanted
guess you
nothing-
have more of a pack mentality. It's
Right.
not necessarily by blood.
Nope.
It's by your pack and who you can trust.
Yes.
I fucking
Family
yes.
is not tied by blood. Your family is who you choose your family to be.
I think there's a great quote, and I've definitely used this as my mantra my whole life. Blood makes you related. Loyalty makes you family.
Absolutely.
And man, you can't speak truer words, because I mean, your journey. It's funny because I'm learning your journey. You full custody with your dad, single parent. I had full custody, or my dad had full custody of me, single parent. Totally different paths. So because your dad's being a fucking superhero essentially, and going and fighting for our country. And he makes this decision okay, we're gonna get joint custody. Were you old enough and aware that was happening?
No.
And so you didn't even have a fucking say.
I
was
had no
already
idea.
Okay. I guess that this is a tough question, but back it up a little bit. I'm sure we're going to learn more. But you said that your dad gets full, free, and clear custody because your mom is, quote, a piece of shit. What defines that, and what things are going on? That is this maybe things that led to their divorce? Is the person she is and that type thing?
So my dad describes my mom as the best friend and best drinking buddy he ever had. Worst mom ever. That's not his exact words, but the first part of it is. So the perfect story my dad would talk about when I was a teenager, he would talk about my dad won Soldier of Europe 3 times in his early career. My dad was pretty well respected in his community, and my dad would work really long hours and come home, and my mom would be passed out on the couch, and I'd been screaming for hours, or she had been, my dad would work, if he would have night duty, he would come home at, 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning, and my mom had been binge drinking all night, and then my dad would have to stay up all day with me and then go back to duty that night. So my dad was pulling, pretty much 24-hour days when I was a real little kid while my mom binge drank. And, as I got a little bit older, she would steal my Ritalin and shit like that. Just not and my mom is not a bad person. Later in life, I reconciled with my mom for a couple of years. After her 7th DUI, she got clean. Miraculously got her driver's license back, which doesn't make any sense, But
I thought 3 strikes and you were out, but that's for another time.
Yeah,
Fair enough.
But so we reconciled. She got clean, and then, not even a year into us actually being in contact again, she started drinking again, and I was like, you know what? If you want to reach out and be in contact with me, you can. I am not going to make effort to be in your life because you've never made effort to be in my life. And for the most part, both of my parents, neither one of them raised me. So now that I'm a parent, they are living vicariously through my kid. They didn't get to raise me, so now they want to be involved in my kid's life more than they were involved in my life. So I'm a lot less judgmental of a person now. I'm a lot less cynical of a person now. So I obviously let them be involved in my kid's life. But when I was a teenager, especially, and I'm sorry I keep jumping around, but
no, we this is how we do it on the show, man. You have to jump around because
when I was a teenager, I told myself, no one will ever raise my kids but me. I don't care what I have to do. I will raise my kids if I have them. And I also told myself that my mom would never ever see any of my children. My mom would not be at my wedding. She was done and out of my life for good. Through all of the shit that I've been through, I've learned that, and you see the corny, you've got to forgive those people shit, but through all of the depression and the anxiety and the ups and downs that I've had in my life, I've realized that you truly do have you don't forget, but you have to let that shit go. Otherwise, those people truly do have power over you for the rest of your life, and that's not how you want to live. That's not how anyone should have to live. So
No, I think that's an anxiety-ridden life.
Mm-hmm.
Because
which
you
we're
are
already
constantly
so anxiety-ridden anyway.
Exactly. Because you get put in a situation where, like, it's so crazy how similar our stories are. I have drama with my mom. We've had falling outs on and off, and I've just recently tried to reconcile with her, She's recently a grandparent and trying to be a better person around my nephew now. So the similarities are just, it's shocking, but, like, you have to know when toxicity is there, and if you can just be brave enough to cut it out, sometimes that hurts.
Yep.
Sometimes
absolutely.
I look back on years of my life and I'm like, man, I didn't spend time with my mom doing anything, like, at all. So I don't have that. I don't really know what that, like, closeness that some people share with their mom is. So I know exactly where you're coming from. So with your mom, I was going to add, there's a point to this. I was going to kind of ask that because I noticed with my mother that when my nephew was born, she kind of changed. She became more, like, emotionally aware. It's like it sobered her up that the picture is even further than her now. Like, you know what I'm saying? So did that same kind of thing happen with your mom where you could almost see her change a little bit and it was like, oh, okay, damn it. Like,
it
okay.
was, I had to look really hard to see it because the perfect descriptor for my mom is she's an 18-year-old trapped in a 40-year-old's body. She's got the let's party and drink all day, and I really don't have to go to work tomorrow. They're not going to fire me kind of mentality. And my mom has always had this ability. She gets really, really good jobs. Like, she's had a dozen careers in her life.
Damn.
And every time she fucks it up, and she gets another one. I don't know how she does it, which just compounds, it just enables her to keep doing what she's doing.
Because she's never been, like, kicked to the bottom and had
Right.
to fight
Well,
up.
even, she went to jail for a long time, like over a year, and that's how she got sober. And then it still didn't make her change, truly. Sitting in a concrete box for a year doesn't make somebody change. I always say you can't change somebody's beliefs because that's somebody's beliefs, and it's not your right to change. Unless it's a belief system that's doing somebody harm, it's not your right to
Exactly.
change it. But alcoholism, I don't believe alcoholism is a disease. I believe it's a choice. There's science that says otherwise, but I've lived it. Most of us have lived it. You choose to pick that bottle up and you choose to stick that needle in your arm and shit like that. No one ever made you do it. You chose to do it. You opened the door to addiction, So,
And there are telltale signs of people early on, and I'm sure we'll get into this, it's telltale early. I could tell you people that I know in my life who have addictive personalities. Like, for example, it's going to sound totally mundane to start, but Dick from Podcastrophe, God help him if he ever got hooked on a hard drug.
yeah.
Because guess what? He would be addicted.
Oh,
and
yeah.
he would not have any way out.
Nope.
But he's smart enough not to make the fucking choice.
That's right.
He goes, you know what? I think that would be a pretty stupid fucking move for me to do.
And I'm the same way. I am exactly the same way.
Exactly. So, okay, back where were we at here? We're going to backpedal to... So your dad agrees because he's got to keep going, jumping back and forth. You're like 6 months with him, 6 months without.
Yep.
You're essentially dumped off to your mom's parents or your grandparents.
Correct.
Half of the year every year are raising you.
So that's the way it originally was supposed to play out, and then it went to I would spend end of the summer, the fall, wintertime, and spring here, and then I would spend just all of the summer with my dad. So I got to see my dad 3 months out of the year, and it worked out because it gave me a lot of experience in my life that most people don't get. I've got to travel the world because of that. So there is, like, always, like I said, I'm not so cynical anymore. There's positives in every situation. You just got to look for them, or look at them from a different perspective. I've traveled to most of Europe, almost made it into the Middle East, but was told I wasn't allowed to go, and I'm glad I didn't go because I probably wouldn't have been able to come back.
Really?
Yeah. So my dad was going to go on a business trip to Azerbaijan, and I was originally supposed to go with him, and then like 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave, there was like an American kidnapped there, and then my dad shut that down on me. He still had to go, but he wouldn't let me go with him.
He's like, not a fucking chance.
Nope. You know, when you're a white American in the Middle East, you're very easily recognized, and then when you have children with you, that makes you that much more of an easy target. You know.
Absolutely, it's a vulnerability.
Right.
It's much like the ideology of the supervillain. You know, easiest way to kill the hero is through people he loves.
That's right.
So
you attack people where they're the weakest.
Man, so he says, no fucking shot. We're not doing that.
Nope.
He goes and comes back successfully,
Right.
I'm guessing.
Yep.
What did you do in that time? Did you have like a sitter or somebody that was, I mean, you were with him?
I hung out with my evil stepmother.
Ooh, I didn't know you had a stepmom.
I have an evil stepmother.
Still,
She's
to
not
this
so
day?
evil anymore, but when I was a kid, she was evil.
Actually evil or just mean because she didn't let you have your way?
Actually evil.
Okay, let's hear about it. Let's break it down.
So my stepmom, she's from East Germany. So she grew up on the eastern side of the wall. Her dad was a Nazi.
Whoa.
Yep.
Holy shit.
He's actually a really cool dude.
You've met him?
Yeah, I've met him. He's a really cool dude, and it gave me an interesting perspective because, you know, we learn so little about true history going through school when we're kids anyway. When you actually get to meet someone from a different time period, that's celebrity's a bad word, like that has some notoriety. You know, anybody that's a fucking Nazi's notorious. You know, you think about a Nazi today. Well, your first inclination is, well, they're bad fucking people. Well, some of the Nazis were just soldiers doing what they were told. Now, that doesn't justify what they did.
Totally. But I get what you're saying because, I mean, there are people now currently. There was a guy, he was the head of ICE, the immigration. I don't remember. I don't know what the fuck it means, but or can't remember right now. But he resigned today.
Oh,
because
really?
He's like, he can't, you know, he couldn't spread the falsehoods of this administration anymore is how he worded his resignation. So, yeah, back to it.
So, he wasn't at, you know, concentration camps or anything like that. He was just
just more one of the guys.
Yeah, he was just doing what he was ordered to do. But yeah, you know, when I was a kid, I had some really cool conversations with that guy. But back to my stepmom. So she grew up on the eastern side of the wall, which was Russian occupied, not a very good place to live. You know, people from East Germany were trying to move into Western Germany every day, and they would be shot, you know, trying to cross the wall or trying to... And there's a place in Berlin called Checkpoint Charlie. It was the American kind of post that was set up to divide each side of the wall, and then... I mean, because we were still doing shit on both sides of the wall. So the Russians had to let us in. We had to, you know, back and forth. But there's a museum on each side of the wall in Berlin, east and west. And the Western Germans grew up in prosperity. And you know, it was still rough post-war, but they had all of the Western privilege. And then you look at, if you go over to the museum for the eastern side, they grew up in extreme poverty. The Russians treated them extremely bad, you know, because they were just killing them not that long ago. So it's a really, if you ever travel abroad and you ever go to Germany and you go to Berlin, the first thing you'll recognize is Berlin. 90% of the city's covered in graffiti. It's kind of a shithole. But there's sections of the Berlin Wall that are still standing, and that's important because that's something that we need to remember. You know, we divided a nation for fucked up reasons to punish them for all the fucked up shit that we did, or that they did, and then half of them had good lives and the other half were basically slaves, you know?
Yeah,
But,
and it's crazy because I remember when I was in school growing up, you would hear that there were the stories of people like hiding under the car to try to get from one side to the next and shit. And so your stepmom had kind of lived through some shit, actually. It hardened her.
She was really little for the majority of the Russian occupation, is how I'm going to word it. But, you know, when she was a teenager, there was still... The wall had came down when she was a teenager... Or, you know, shortly in her late teens, the wall came down. So there was still, I mean, it was still, East Germany was still shitty. So she had a rough childhood, and then when she met my dad, my mom, who is batshit crazy, was threatening them and trying to do shit to them all the time, and threatening my dad, and my stepmom hates my mom to this day. And she took that out on me as a kid. So
resentment by proxy because she couldn't physically show her disdain for your mother to your mother.
Yep. So
and
she
you
took
were
it
a
out on me.
representation of your mom.
Yep. So, and you know, while I was there, I took time away from her. You know, I spent time with my dad. I was there for the summer. I wanted to do shit with my dad, but my dad still had to work, so my dad would go to base during the day, and I would be at home with my stepmom, and it's like, well, I'm going to go hide in my room for 6 hours. You know, I don't want to
do anything but be around her.
Right. I would do anything to get away from her. And when my dad was stationed in Spain the first time, there is hundreds and hundreds of things for kids to do all day, every day. So I would ride my bike to the pool, and, you know, I would go... the base that he was stationed at, it's in a city called Rota. It's one of the biggest naval bases in Spain. Actually, yeah, it's still active. But they had a movie theater on base that was free. Everything was free except concessions. So all I had to do was walk in and pay, and they were affordable concessions, like $2 for a popcorn.
Like actual cost of the shit.
Yeah. So I would go, you know, if I didn't want to hang out with her during the day, I would ride my bike on base and, you know, grab a bite to eat and watch a movie. And the next day I would ride a couple miles up. My dad always lived off base. He never lived on base in on base housing. So I would always have to ride a bike somewhere. And public transportation in Europe is fantastic. If we had public transportation here, we wouldn't have to deal with half of the shit that we have to deal with. But
Totally.
And it was weird for me for a long time growing up. You know, I would ride the train by myself places and all kinds of shit when I was over there, and I would come back here and it's like, well, we've got some corn. Looks like some soybeans over there. Looks like
And
that guy's
some more
doing
corn.
meth. You know. But
That guy's doing meth.
right. But so they built this like $1 million pool for servicemen and their families to utilize off base, which is unheard of. They don't typically do stuff like that because it's a security hazard. It's not secured on base, so they can't effectively. They're not gonna post people to guard it. You know.
Yeah, totally.
So, but I would ride my bike up there and shit, and they had like a kids center where teenagers would go and play video games, and they would do cookouts, and I would do organized sports during the summertime while I was there and shit like that. So I always had shit to do, you know, but if I was ever around her, it was like Cinderella and her stepmom. You know, you don't mean anything. You're just here for a little while, and then you'll be gone again, and your dad will forget about you, and that wore on me for a long time when I was a kid because my dad, one thing that I can never take away from my dad is my dad always gave me the choice. I could move and live with him full time anytime that I wanted to. And that's a little bit of a cop-out for him because he never had to make that decision.
You did.
He put that decision on me, which a child should never have to make that kind of decision. They should have the ability, but they shouldn't have to be made to. So, once I became an adult, I told him why I never, he knew my stepmom and I didn't get along, and he knew the whole story behind that. And I told him when I was a teenager, I said, I'm never going to make you choose, but I'm never going to let you forget how she made me live or how she made me feel, whenever you weren't around. And whenever I was there, they would fight a lot. It put a lot of stress on their marriage for a long time. And I wasn't doing anything. I was just there.
It wasn't like you were getting into trouble.
No.
You just existed, and that was creating tension for her.
I mean, I always got into trouble, but I was smart enough to never get caught. So, I
Awesome.
was... Yeah, right. But, so... kind of lost my train of thought. So I told him I would never let him forget how she treated me. But then I sat him down a couple years ago. I went to visit him. He lives in Houston, Texas now. I went to visit him for 9 days. And she and my younger sister were both in Germany visiting her family. So I had my dad for 9 days straight. It was just me and my dad, and I've never had that. My entire life, it's never just been my dad and I for a very long period of time. So we got to, drink good booze and relax by the pool and really hash some shit out. And we got on the topic of me growing up here, and he said, well, you always had a choice. And I said, I always had a choice, yeah, but you don't know why I never made the choice besides my stepmom. My mom obviously wasn't involved in my life. My mom's dad passed away when I was 10. I watched him die, which was really fucking tragic when I was a kid, because that was my dad.
Yeah.
I have two dads and I have one mom, and that's my grandma. My mom is not my mom. That's Amy. But my aunt, who's my mom's oldest sibling, she filled that mom role for me whenever my grandma couldn't. I bounced around from my grandma's house to my aunt's house, back and forth. My aunt never had kids, so one of my sisters and I were her kids, because my mom obviously wasn't going to raise us. And my grandma's old, so, you don't want to put... My aunt wanted to help and didn't want to put all that on her, and then having us would be like having kids, So if I would have left, it would have left my aunt and my grandma by themselves. They wouldn't have had... After my grandpa passed away, my uncle... he was the only testosterone around, everything kind of... My grandpa was a wonderful man, very respected in the community, could make gold out of anything, but he was very bad at managing money. So when he passed away, he crippled our family just by not being there anymore.
In plan.
So that all of that weight fell on my uncle's shoulders, and it wasn't his responsibility, and he stepped up and did a lot. But if I would have left, it would have just been my aunt and my grandma, and then they wouldn't have had anybody to take care of. And that's why I always stayed here. And I've always hated it.
You felt an obligation to them to keep them together, because without you, it all could have fallen apart very easily.
Well, and they raised me when they didn't have to. It wasn't their responsibility. So, when I got out of high school, my plan was to enlist in the military and go down the same path that my dad did, and most of the men in my family have. And I was going to have a long career and retire when I was 40 and smoke cigars and drink beer and be retired. And then, right when I got out of high school, my grandma got really sick. My younger sister got really, really sick, almost died. So I decided to put my college aspirations on hold, my military aspirations on hold, and go to work so I could help take care of them. When I was getting ready to my senior year in high school, my sister just started losing weight all of a sudden, and I figured, oh shit, Chloe's going through puberty, she's, she's a teenager. And then one day my aunt called me and said, well, Chloe's in the emergency room. Well, what's wrong with her? Well, they don't know. And then, later on we found out that my sister had juvenile diabetes. So,
whoa.
Just overnight became a type 1 diabetes. Well, not overnight, but, none of the doctors had ever noticed any of the signs, never had any, not even
no
an
inclination
idea.
that it was coming.
Right. So, and then fast forward a couple years later, she's also got a rare genetic blood clotting disorder that only like 1% of the entire world's population has. So she almost died from that, too.
It's extremely clots.
Do what?
It has the extreme tendency to clot. She's susceptible to blood clots often.
And they're in her lungs. It's always in her lungs. So
she's got to be taking blood thinners constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Totally.
And on top of being a type 1 diabetic, So I've had nothing but good health, and my sister's had nothing but terrible health.
Yeah.
Genetics are weird, man.
They are really weird. It's interesting to think about because you can never prepare for what your body is going to do before your body has prepared to do it.
Right.
It's going to happen. Like, we're all on this path, and some weird shit's going to happen to my body someday. One of my balls will disappear or something, something strange like that. And I'll be like, oh, God. Case of the missing nut.
It's funny to laugh about, but it is the truth of it. My good friend Travis that I did the Voice of Survival with, that is normally one conversation that I just know we don't talk about death and the end of our lives and shit like that, because he gets really down and paranoid about it. And I say it now because I'm the big tough teenager again. It's gonna come for us all. It's a part of life, but. As we get older, it's fucking scary to think about. Like,
it is. These vessels are temporary, man.
Yep, they are temporary.
Me and one of the guys I'm friends with around here were talking recently, and he was like, "I feel like it only makes sense that our like the essence, the human spirit, is being harvested from this." Vessel, because energy is only ever created, it can't be destroyed.
Right.
So what would the purpose of our bodies be? And I feel like if that idea is true, it's like everything you're doing, everything I'm doing, our quote-unquote karma points are building our overall essence, so that energy, when it's released, does something. I don't know what the fuck it does. Goes to the sun. It makes us last for 1 billion years. Who the fuck knows? But to speak on that episode you did with Travis, man, that episode got me. And I'm sure it was hard for you to listen to that while you were talking to him, because you are also very close to your father, and his story is just like extraordinarily tragic.
Yep.
Extraordinarily. So it's just like,
and it mirrors, my experience with my mom's dad, because, and I'll tell that story right now because it's the perfect time to do it. So, when I was a kid, my mom's dad gave me everything. I was another one of his kids. And my mom's family is significant because, and part of the reason why I have that mantra that no one will ever raise my kids but me, the trend in the James family is have a bunch of kids and then give them to somebody else to raise them. So my mom's dad was one of like 6 kids, I think. And he was the only one that stuck by his parents and wasn't in trouble all the time. And, he was the responsible one. He took care of people. And so all of his brothers, he raised all of their kids. His sisters, he raised their kids.
Damn.
And then my mom's mom, most of her family was killed in a car accident when she was really little. So she was also like overly anxious about taking care of people all the time because she lost most of her family. So yeah, they raised like 40 kids, not including their own children.
Those are nieces and nephews.
Yeah.
Jesus.
So when I showed up, it was like, it fit right in.
Here's just another one we got to handle.
Yep. But I was special. Because I was their grandkid, so I was special.
First grandkid?
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, you definitely have that that special rite of passage.
Right. Yeah, I'm the oldest, and I was my middle sister was born shortly before my grandpa passed away. So I think she was 4 years old when he passed away.
So old
Something
enough
like
to
that.
remember, but
Yeah, she
not
remembers
old enough
him,
to really
but- And it's sad when her and I get together and talk about him, because I got 10 years and she didn't get to do all the shit with him that I did, and it's hard on her, because my grandpa was a cool ass dude. He gave me anything and everything that I could have ever wanted for, and took me everywhere. He owned he owned multiple construction companies. And he would get me up for school in the morning, and he would say, "You want to go to school today?" "No." "All right, get in the truck. You're going to work with me." And,
awesome.
He was just a badass dude, Never pressured me to do anything, but he taught me everything,
Totally.
Never wanted me to call him Grandpa. It was Papa or Bob, But anyway, so we were big involved in livestock, and I was pretty much all the way up until I started my first major career in life. But I begged him and begged him and begged him to saddle this pony that I had for me. And he didn't want to, and I kept begging him, and I kept begging him, and I kept begging him. And he did, and I rode that horse for like 10 minutes. And I said, "All right, I'm done," and I made him do everything, put the horse away. My grandma was fixing dinner, so we walked back down to the barn, and we ate. And he's like, "I don't feel good. I'm not going to eat." And then he went and sat down on the couch, and I'm just inhaling my food, stuff in my face.
Oh, yeah.
And I look in the living room, and my uncle is in there, and he yells to my grandma to call an ambulance, and I hear my grandpa say, "I think I'm having a heart attack." And he'd already had 2.
Oh,
So my
shit.
grandpa had a heart attack when he was really young, and decided to quit smoking. And then he had another heart attack in his 40s, or in his late 40s. And then he decided to get healthy and lose a bunch of weight. And then that night, he was 67. He passed away on the living room floor.
Oh,
and
man.
for a long time, I blamed myself for it, because I made him do all that shit right before he had a heart attack. So it was like I was the straw that broke the camel's back. But for a long, it's still really tough. I don't mind
to put
talking.
that guilt on yourself as a kid, though.
Yeah, I don't mind talking about it, because I've accepted the fact that it wasn't my fault. It was his time to go. When your heart has already failed twice, it's statistically rare for you to come back after a third one. There's people that do it, but that's not normal. But I basically watched my dad die, in my living room floor. So that was I didn't go to school, I think, for almost 3 months.
That's fucking traumatic,
right.
genuinely.
And I remember there were kids at school that were talking shit about me. Well, he's just staying home so he doesn't have to go to school. And it's like, I look back and think about it now, and it's like, we are a shit fucking species.
Yeah, we are.
We are
no compassion.
The best fucking thing that could happen to this planet is if our species was eradicated from the earth.
Very
I love being
Ultron of
alive.
you.
I love having kids and procreating and doing all that shit. But the best thing that could happen to us, or happen to the earth, is if we were just gone.
We're pretty awful things.
Yep. But we can also be.
Compassionless. I think that's the one lesson I always say is I just want the world to learn compassion. If you can see other people's viewpoints, it helps you to appreciate everyone's viewpoints, and then you can understand the bigger picture, I think.
Well, you have to be willing to look at other people's viewpoints to start with. I think that's the biggest problem. Because if you and I, as different as we are in or how much differing our views are, if you and I sat down in a room and we weren't allowed to leave that room until, we saw the bigger picture of each other's lives and opinions, for us it wouldn't take very long. But for most
give
people,
us 25 minutes.
right? But for most people, it would take days and days and days, and it goes back to what I said. You cannot change someone's beliefs.
Wait a minute, time out. Back up. If we're going to sit in a room and we can't leave until we hash out the bigger picture, are we going to record that as a podcast? Because if that's the case, we need to go at least an hour and a half just so it's awesome.
Probably, and we're both going to be stoned, too.
Okay, I'm into that. Yes, please,
Right.
let's do that.
Yeah,
That's like the perfect scenario.
I really wish I could, man, because
I know.
it helps my anxiety so much, and it's fucked up that we can't have a plant.
Well, you know what's interesting that you say that is I just read today, very important because of where you live currently. I'm not in your state. I'm a state over here in Illinois right now where, medical's legal and they're on the way to fully recreationalizing, so it's not really that big of a deal. But apparently Canada legalizing recreationally is going to fast-track Indiana as being one of the next states.
Why is
legalize.
that tied together?
I had the article up to read on the show because I was going to ask you what your opinion was on it, and I'm not sure if my phone saved it. Let me see. It was on the normal Facebook page.
Well, while you're looking for it, I'll just go ahead and lay my opinion out.
Sure, continue on.
The benefits are, infinite for marijuana. The issue lies in it would hurt the tobacco companies, and it would hurt the textile companies, and it would hurt the paper manufacturing companies. That's where all the issues are. There's really only two negatives to using marijuana. In men, it's slightly lower sperm count, and you get a little bit of smoke in your lungs, which is not good. But you don't have to use it that way.
No, you can do it in a whole bunch of different ways.
You can fucking rub it into your eyeballs. You can do it however you want. You can refine it down to where it's literally just liquid THC and fucking do it that way, and you're still getting all the same good shit. But what boggles my mind, obviously, like I said, I support it. What boggles my mind is we as a society are trusted to recreationally use an extremely addictive substance and alcohol outside of our working hours. But we are not trusted to use something that is not addictive outside of our working hours, our time. So I have this big hard-on with the modern workforce and industry where, say, Subaru is the perfect example. When you hire in at Subaru, you're told plan for every day to be a 10-hour day, and you'll never miss an appointment or anything that you're doing. And that's a good motto to have because you can't work any more than 10 hours unless you volunteer for it. I'm sorry, but Mr. Fuji at Subaru, anything after 10 hours, that's my time.
Hell yeah.
10 hours and 30 seconds. That 30 seconds is my time. That's 30 seconds cutting into my time. So no one, in my opinion, no one on this earth has the right to tell me what to do besides me anyway.
With your time.
But especially with my time. Time is something that's very important to me, and it's why I have the opinions that I do about teachers and how they're overpaid because of the time that they have. We only have a finite amount of time. Money is an imaginary thing. It's an imaginary concept. It holds no value. Truly holds no value. The American dollar means nothing.
All
so if you're going to tell me,
nothing.
Do what?
I said all currency means nothing.
Gold. I'll pick out gold specifically. Gold is like the best electrical conductor on Earth.
Fact.
So gold to me has value. Silver and copper and platinum and palladium and all that shit, that to me has value because it's something that can actually be used. The cotton banknotes that we have that are green and have a bunch of strippers' ass cocaine on them have no fucking value at all because it's an imaginary thing.
All of the stripper ass cocaine.
Right.
You're right, too. It's gross.
Right.
Don't lick a dollar.
No, hell no.
You might get HPV from that dollar.
That's right. But so time is so much more important to me than money. That's why I left my previous job. You know,
does Subaru count as previous?
Prior to Subaru.
Okay, gotcha. Which we're gonna get there too. Okay, so real quick before we leave the topic of cannabis and what's been going on. This is the article. I found it. So now that the Canadian Senate has approved legislation of marijuana for recreational use, State Representative Jim Lucas, he's actually a Republican out of Seymour, believes it will expedite the process on lawmakers legalizing it in Indiana. I would hate like hell to think that we're basing our freedom and laws off of Canada, but you have a country that's just north of us leading the way on an issue that so many Americans are overwhelmingly in favor of. He just said that Canadians are the canary in the coal mine. When you look within your own country, we have 29 states that have medicinal marijuana and 9 with recreational. It's coming our way. This is something that is going to happen. So he's going to push for that shit to happen.
Cool. It's something that it needs to happen. You know, we need
the end of the war on drugs.
Man, the war on drugs is something that
whole nother podcast. Should we save that one?
I could dedicate an entire podcast to that because I've voiced my opinions on our war on terrorism right now. We are in Afghanistan for one reason. That is to control the opium trade.
Oil. Oh, opium. Yeah, you're right.
Opium is the biggest one. Afghanistan is the number one producer of opium in the world. They eclipse all of Asia, which is a marvel.
I'm just curious, in America, can you answer me this question? In America, what's the leading cause of death per drug overdose? Isn't it opium?
Yes.
Isn't that the most fucked up thing?
Right.
We're sending American soldiers to fight and possibly die for a substance that is ultimately going to kill American citizens.
But it makes money. That's
capitalism.
That's the fucking bad thing about capitalism, man. All we care about is money. You know, and I just don't like isms. Period. You know, I'm not a big
You're
fan
an
of
ist
isms.
kind of person.
Yes. But so we're there to control the opium trade because we control the war on drugs. We finance it. We fuel it. Yada yada on and so forth. But we also have the largest pharmaceutical industry in the world. We have the highest population of people dependent on the pharmaceutical industry in the world. We have to have it. That's why we went there.
Yeah.
The oil and I think they have like a huge lithium reserve, I think. Afghanistan, I can't remember off the top of my head. I think Afghanistan has an enormous lithium deposit somewhere out there in the desert full of shit. But the opium is the important part of it. We don't give a shit about the resources. Those are just a bonus. We're there for the opium.
Okay, so back at it. Let's see. Where were we at in your journey? Okay. Your grandfather, Bob's passing.
Mm-hmm.
Is a traumatic experience.
Yep.
And there's something that, okay, at 13, it wasn't the same. This is not the Peter Quill comparing dicks and what tragedies we've had.
Right.
But at 13, I know that experiencing death in my family by my uncle being killed by a drunk driver, it was extremely traumatic to me. And to this day, I have PTSD stuff from that where I am affected by the littlest thing can set me off, you know? Mm-hmm. Long term, now that you're an adult and you've lived actually more of your life without him than with him, are those long terms for you still there? Because I feel like you were, being at the heart of that situation, being right there on, in it. You were in the fucking thick of it, watching it go down. It's got to be impossible, right? It's an impossible thing to escape. I can't even imagine how you did it.
So, it's kind of corny, but there's been a couple movies in the last decade where people talk about loss, and they say, "Well, I can't remember their face." You know, it's a corny thing from a movie, but for a long time, I think I just repressed it all. You know, when pretty much from that time forward, I was just an asshole. I didn't give a shit about anything. You know, I carried that anger from my mom and my dad not raising me and everything that was going on in my life. Losing him troubles at school, excuse me, I carried all of that forward into high school, and then after high school, I was just a terrible fucking person to be around. I was a fun person to be around, but if you didn't fit into my status quo, I shit on you. My dad says that our family has this ability to hurt people's feelings forever, and I fucking did.
That's awesome.
I was the Billy Madison.
Amazing reference.
But when he becomes an adult, he starts checking people off of his list that he reconciles with and admits to being a shithead. And I had to do that a couple years ago. I had to reach out to some people because, though there was a lot of people that I was very kind to and I was very supportive of when other people weren't, I was a fucking dickhead to everybody all the time. And that's part of the reason I did organized sports, because I could let out a little bit of that frustration in a organized manner and not
competitive manner.
Yeah, competitive. Yeah, it was tackling fuel, as Bobby Boucher would say.
Yes. Oh my God, you with these Adam Sandler movie drops. Yeah. This is amazing. 2 for 2, Waterboy.
I was a teenager,
yes.
Man. I was ready for the chlorophyll, but so yeah, I was just anger. That's what it did to me for a long time. And I mean, you can ask my wife right now. Up until about a year and a half ago, I was a fucking terrible person to live with, because any little thing at all that didn't go my way would just, it was like dropping a nuke on somebody. I would just explode. It was just pure rage all the time.
I think that is definitely repressed and bottled up things that you probably are learning as an adult to deal with. Mm-hmm. Things you're having to come to grips with as you grow older, and as we were discussing off air, there's only so much time. Time is limited, mm-hmm. So you have to just kind of prioritize. Okay, I've got to get my shit in order, so I'm not feeling this way constantly. It's interesting because I feel like I know we aren't that far in your journey yet, but I feel like in some ways podcasting has helped you break away from that as well.
A little bit, because I always have something to say about everything. You know that as well as anybody that listens or watches the show. I can talk about anything and everything all day long. I love to speak. And it's not that I like to hear myself speak. I like being the guy that doesn't have the popular opinion. Especially with nerd culture, I'm normally the guy with the incredibly unpopular opinion, but I always have reasons to justify it. And I'm that way specifically because of one person. There was a guy that I worked with at Tate & Lyle. He was kind of my mentor, and I'm still friends with him today. I'm actually going to hang out with him on Sunday. But he told me very early on in my career there that we all justify what we do. And he would tell me that whenever I would get mad about something, or, he was always the guy that I would vent to or go to for advice. And he would always start with, we all justify what we do. That doesn't make it right or wrong, but we all justify it. And it took me a long time to really buy into that. But something as simple as that is we all justify what we do. Okay, that's a pretty cut and dry statement. But if you think about it, it's like, think about all the decisions that you make every single day that without even thinking about it, you justify it. You just make the decision. I'm going to drive an extra mile and then put gas in my truck instead of stopping right here where I should and just put gas in it. That's something.
That's fucking weird. I did that today.
It's incredibly trivial to think about, but that's the perfect example. Like, I'll do this in a minute. You justify it. You don't even know why you're justifying it, but you just do without doing it. So, from high school into college, dealing with all the stuff with my grandma and my sister and getting them healthy and on track. I just kind of did some odd jobs and did what I could do to draw a paycheck, and then it was like, it's time. It's time for me to be a real life adult and get a job that might be a career. You know, by that time, I had put my military aspirations aside because of Skylar.
Let me ask you a quick question about the military aspirations. Would you say that was your dream? Like some kids dream that they're going to be basketball players or astronauts or whatever. Your whole life growing up, your dream was to enlist.
Yep. And
that gets brutally taken away from you.
Right.
Like unfairly.
And that's the way that I looked at it at first. And through all of Skylar and I's trials and tribulations, I actually blamed it on her for a long time because I started dating her in high school. She stuck with me through all the bullshit, and she's helped my family out a lot. And you know, I paid for part of her school, and we've always leaned on each other. And then it was like, okay, I'm ready. I'm finally ready to enlist. I got back in shape. I was ready to go. I'd met with a recruiter, and she's like, well, I'm not leaving. And, you know, that was like other people having control over my life all over again. Like, it fucking sucked.
A totally different situation. Before we move back, okay, I'm all over because my brain's on two levels here, and I'm like, I have a million questions for you.
Go ahead.
So we're gonna take the final. I think this is the final part of the puzzle from 10 years old to your growing up ages.
Mm-hmm.
Everything that's happened to you, situation with your mom, situation with your dad, your grandfather, everything. At any point, are you a buy-in of religion? Were you a religious person?
Well, So when I was a kid, my mom's family was not religious, and I've got a funny story to tell. When my parents were still together, I'm glad you brought that up because it's a funny story.
Sure.
So my dad was raised Catholic, Irish Catholic family. So like Roman Catholic, except we kill people, kind of shit. You know,
brutal.
We live on alcohol and misery.
Potatoes.
Right.
Misery. I
gotta
love it. That was great.
Gotta tell my kid night real quick. Night, sweetie.
Oh.
But, so, my dad was raised Catholic, and I was confirmed Catholic later on in life. I don't buy into religion now, but, so after I was born, my dad took my mom and I to get me baptized, and he was meeting with the Monsignor, who my dad has reconnected with later in life. He still lives in Augsburg, lives not far from... The base that I was born on has been decommissioned, but everything's still there. The parade grounds are there. Everything's still there. I want to make a trip back because of all the traveling that I've done, I've never been back to where I was born. I've been all over Germany, but I've never been back to Augsburg. So I want to take... When Ruby gets a little bit older, I want to take her there so, you know, it can be that cool thing like, hey, this is where my dad was born. You know, I've been to where my dad was born. That weird shit.
And it's not like a drive 15 minutes into Lafayette. Like,
right.
It's actually like a kind of badass story. Like, we're in fucking Germany right now, by the way.
But so my dad is and my mom are meeting with the Monsignor, who's a really nice guy. I've actually talked to him a little bit now that I've become an adult. And he's like, okay, well, you're obviously confirmed Catholic. You know, I'm fully okay with baptizing your son as long as your wife confirms Catholic. And my wife's like, I ain't fucking doing that. Or my mom said, I ain't fucking doing that. And the Monsignor, I can't remember his name off the top of my head, but he's a super relaxed guy. Like, you know, my mom's in his office dropping F-bombs, getting hostile with him, and he's just calm, cool, and collected. And my mom's got like a mini skirt on and shit. Just fucking looking like trash. My dad explained the story to me, and I'm sure it's a little bit skewed exaggeration to get the point across. But, you know, my dad says basically the Monsignor and my mom just start going back and forth, and the Monsignor finally says, you know what? If you're not willing to become Catholic, you don't even have to go to church anymore. All you have to do is go through the class and then go through Bible school for a couple of weeks, do another class, and then fucking dunk your head in water and be Catholic. If you're not willing to do that for your son's eternal soul, then basically you and him are both going to burn in hell, and now you can get the fuck out of my office.
What?
You know?
He said that to
Yep.
her?
Yep.
Oh, that's fucking
So,
rich.
and there my dad is. My dad is very much like me. I am a carbon copy of my dad. I'm just a little bit better looking. But, he's like, what the fuck do I do? So I ended up getting baptized later on, but it's like, my mom fucking just condemned me to hell. Like, what the fuck is going on?
I totally get the piece of shit reference.
Right.
Said
I obviously was a little kid, but so I got confirmed Catholic later on. I did all that shit. And then as I started to get older, and then with my grandpa passing away and all the shit that I was going through when I was an early teenager, like a lot of people, I had faith. I reached out to God, and I was never answered. And it was like, you know what? I'll do it myself. And
very Thanos of you.
Yep, I'll do it myself. And I get this because I was raised from my grandpa, by my grandpa. My grandpa was a self-made man. Everything that he had in life, he earned it. Everything that I have around me right now, everything that I've accomplished in 26 years, I have earned it. I've never had anything given to me. I've worked for every single cent. So when my faith was tested and I said I'll do it myself, that was it. And then as I continued on the journey of considering myself more and more of an intellectual, I believe that there's maybe something out there. There might be a fucking cosmic being like Dormammu out there that's fucking omnipotent and control. I don't know. I can't prove it. Nobody can prove it. Nobody can tell me that God does or does not exist. The only stipulation is, well, we believe God exists. I can't buy into that.
Well, I believe Santa Claus exists, motherfucker.
Right. And that's funny.
And I've seen him at the mall.
Right. Yeah. No shit. But Christianity is it, and especially now that I'm an adult, I couldn't go back to the Christian religion because, when I was a teenager, my first experience of something outside of Catholicism, I was dating this girl, and like most Christian girls, she was very promiscuous. But
and they act like they're not fucking
right.
sluts.
So I was dating this girl, and she's like, well, my family likes you. My dad wants to ask you something. So I came over to their house and I ate dinner with them, and her dad was a really nice guy. I still talk to him. And he's like, would you like to go to service with us in the morning? And I was like, you know what? Sure. You're going out of your way to ask me to spend time with you when, I'm the shithead kid that is fucking nailing your daughter, but you're okay with it. She's going to burn in hell, but you're okay with it.
That dick.
Right. But, so I agreed. And I asked, is this traditional service? Are we doing 10 o'clock service? How are we doing it? And they were Christian, non-denominational. So we said 10 o'clock, be at the house about 9:30. Okay, no problem. So I get up the next morning, get ready, I shave, I put my suit on, because Catholics, we wear suits to church. And, I show up to their house super early, and I walk in, and they're all in their pajamas, and there's kids running all around the house, and okay, cool, I'll just kind of kick back and wait to leave. And I was talking to her older sister, and we were having a good time, and he's like, all right, let's go. And they're all in pajamas still. No shit, all of them wearing fucking pajamas. They might as well have been wearing onesies. And here I am wearing a suit. I mean, full two-piece suit, like the whole shebang.
You're definitely on a place today, Junior.
Yeah. So I went to church with them. I was the only one that wasn't wearing pajamas.
At the entire church?
In the entire church. They were all wearing pajamas.
That's kind of a fucking cool religion. Sign me up. Church?
Yeah, I don't know. Religion's a formal thing to me. It's the Catholicism. You gotta look your best when you're at church, because it
gotta be a sharp dressed man for God.
Pride is a terrible thing, but you have to have a little bit of pride when you're asking forgiveness for snorting that coke off that stripper's asshole the night before. That's a cool thing
The
about
stripper
Catholics.
asshole. Jeez.
That's a cool thing about Catholics. All they got to do is go into a box and say they're sorry, and then all is forgiven. But anyway, so one of the things that bothered me about Christianity, or at least non-denominational Christianity, is they sing and they dance and they do all that weird shit. And her dad's a really cool dude, and I have a lot of respect for him. But he's up there and he's singing and dancing and strumming the hell out of that acoustic, and I'm like, man, I'm used to like Gregorian chants and you're quiet in church, and we get drunk afterwards and talk shit about each other. Like this isn't church to me. So we split up not long after that, and then I went to another church here in Lafayette that's actually a cult.
Whoa!
I think it's a cult, but so I walked into like an afternoon service, and I sit down, and everybody is well dressed, and everybody looks clean cut, and like what a normal group of people would look like. And all of a sudden they start talking in tongues and rolling around on the ground and doing shit like that. And
the smack on the forehead.
Yep, all of that shit. The cyber demons. So I went with my aunt and her friend. Her friend asked my aunt and I to go, and I basically got drug along. But I looked at my aunt and I said, I can't do this, and I went and sat outside on the curb until it was done. I'm not gonna. I don't do that holy roller shit.
Don't subscribe to that.
I ain't about that life.
I dated a girl who went to Bethel Church.
Oh.
And her brother was, at the time, 13 years old and had never spoke a word in his life because he was really, like very, very autistic. I'm pretty sure he's doing pretty cool in life now. Like, he's like 25 or 26 and still good, but still has never spoke or anything. And, man, this dude was up there giving a sermon at the church one time, and I'm with this whole family, and they're like, when's Justin going to talk? They asked him, and the dude comes up, and he says, I'm going to tell you right now, in 2 to 3 weeks, your son's going to say a bunch of words. And he smacked this lady that was my girlfriend's mom on the head, and she fell over, and was all, like, writhing on the ground. And I'm like, bull fucking shit.
Yeah.
2 to 3 weeks later came, he still wasn't talking, and I went, bullshit. I call fucking full-blown... No, you should not smack a lady in the head and tell her fucking autistic kid is all of a sudden going to be cured, because it's not fucking science.
The power of Christ compels ye.
No, it doesn't.
I don't. Part of the reason I have a problem with modern religion, just specifically Christianity, is because it's a business.
100%.
There's no reason that Joel Osteen should be fucking raking in millions.
A tax-free business, no
Tax-free
less.
business, thank you. I should not have to spend money to support, to have faith in God. If God has the expectation that I have undying faith in him, then that should be the only cost, or the only price that I pay.
Exactly. You're, like, pledging your soul to your creator is real, and the concept that you have to give these other people who are upholding his word money to make it real is fucking bullshit. It's literally criminal. It's the most brilliant criminal scam that's ever happened in our country.
And there's shepherds with flocks that legitimately give 30+% of their income.
Yes.
And they live in poverty so they can get into heaven. That is fucking insane.
Fuck that. Give me a nice ass sofa.
Right, yeah. I mean, and, I'm not a materialistic person. I don't think that we all should hoard money, and I think we should be smart with our money, but I'm not fucking giving somebody 30% of my fucking yearly paycheck because they say that if I do that, I'm going to get into heaven. I'm sorry, I'll take my chances. Like I said earlier, I'll do it myself. I'll fucking climb the stairway to heaven, and I'll fucking bust the door down. I'll get in myself.
Kick St. Peter in his fucking teeth.
Yep. Truly, honestly, I believe in Odinism.
Okay, I vibe that.
And
All Father.
Yep. And I believe my dad and I had this conversation not long ago, and he said, I like to think about that too, because that's our heritage.
I could see. Oh, lovely drop of heritage. Yeah. Nice.
But if you put yourself in that time period and you're wanting to explore and take those perilous journeys, and you're needing people to sign up for you or sign up to go on that shit with you, what's the only way to get people to go? Well, if you die while you're out here, then you'll get to go to Valhalla, and then you'll live forever. Otherwise, you'll go to the frozen place called Hell with all the old people and the women. Okay, I'll take my chances. I'll have everlasting battle for life, So
sure.
There's always a ploy to religion, but at least with Odinism, I can buy into it a little bit. It gives me something
is built
to
on
shoot
nobility.
For. Yeah.
100% Odinism is built on nobility.
My
my
dad's mom passed away a couple years ago, and in her will, she had it written up that she would have a Viking funeral.
Fuck yes, that's amazing.
And my dad and his sisters gave it to her.
That's fucking incredible.
Mm-hmm. So that's
like
in my will.
Truly...
I will go out on a funeral pyre, pushed into a body of water.
I love that, dude. Same. Like that. I kind of dig on this bio urn thing.
Yeah, I saw that not long ago. I think that's really, really cool.
Like, I'm like, yeah, plant my ass in a tree.
Yep.
Fucking A.
Let
Do
me
it,
be
please.
a tree. Reincarnate me into that fucking tree.
You know why? Because trees are long lasting, man.
Mm-hmm.
And weathered and tested. Just like the human soul.
We wouldn't be alive without them.
Exactly. Hell yeah, we wouldn't be. Got to create that oxygen. Okay, so I'm going to back up with the religion one last thing, and then we can move forward into more of your story, because we're getting closer here. But now that you're a parent, and religion is a thing that is coming at your child in all angles. Mm-hmm. Your schools are going to do it. Your preschools are going to do it. Everything is going to try to find a way to preach that good word into your child. Where do you stand on that, and how... I guess, do you protect her against that, being that you're intelligent enough to know what it is? Or are you going to just be freedom of choice, do it your own way?
So when I was in school, and that's, I'll backtrack a little bit real quick. My dad agreed for me to live here because obviously I would have a good home life because of my grandparents. But at the time in the 90s, Lafayette was... very rural, extremely low crime rate, very good schools, good job outlook, so on and so forth. It was the complete opposite of what it is right now. Lafayette is a fucking shithole now. Terrible education system, drugs
I heard there
everywhere.
are meth heads that are literally dying on the streets.
Right.
That's fucked up.
All the convenience stores are getting robbed pretty much every day. They have a circuit that they hit about every week. Like, I'm going to get the VP on Tuesday. You go ahead and get that Citgo on Wednesday. We'll circle back around. We'll get the Valero on Friday. That's kind of what it is in Lafayette now. But anyway, so when I was growing up in school, I didn't have religion thrust down my throat. It was, there's supposed to be a separation between church and state in our government, even though we don't have that. Like most of the shit that our government's supposed to not do, they do. But I can honestly say that I never once in school was forced to buy into any religious doctrine that I didn't want to listen to, Totally. I can't say, and when I was in high school, it was the same way. We hardly ever talked about religion at all, which was one of the positives from my high school experience. When I wanted religion, I just went and picked a girl up from Central Catholic, but I was a shithead, dude. I could talk my way in and about out at anything, but
golden tongue, gotta love it.
I had it, man, and I was a lot better looking back then. But so fortunately, we found a daycare. Like most daycares, it's very expensive, but we found a daycare that it's just a school from infancy all the way up until they get to middle school. The daycare will actually take kids. So the cool thing about Lafayette is, besides one school system, you can send your kid to any school in the city. So
there's not a district-based thing.
there is for one school system, but all the rest of them are open to anybody. The only caveat is you have to provide transportation for your children. So the daycare that we are sending Ruby to, all the way up until she's in middle school, they will actually bus her to and from school as long as we drop her off there.
Wow.
So, and yeah, which is really cool and kind of justifies the expensive cost, but they help potty train, and they're actually teaching shit at school, and not just you're going to play with toys for an hour and then you're going to take a nap and then you're going to play with toys for another hour, It's an actual school, and it is 100% religion free.
That's great.
When Ruby gets a little bit older and she gets curious like I did, and she wants to explore religion, if she wants to go to church, I'll go to church with her, because I can assure you that my wife will not. My wife is 100% anti-religion. So I would say I'll let her make her own decisions, and any of my other children that I may or may not have.
Future yous.
Yeah, future me's. We should all as just human beings should be free to make whatever decisions we want, as long as that's not harming somebody else. That's why I have so many problems with Islam. You have an entire region of people that are uneducated being sent to holy men who are slightly educated. The people who can't read the Quran are told what's in the Quran, which isn't what actually is in the Quran. And they can't feed their children, but they keep having them. So the holy men say, well, send your boys to the madrasas, and we will make them warriors of God. And then you don't have to feed them anymore. We'll take care of them. And I'm not going to get... I don't hate
Yet
Islam.
another podcast.
I don't hate Islam. I've had people tell me that well, you're just Islamophobic. No, I'm not. I don't look at the world through rose-colored glasses. Afghanistan specifically is a very undereducated nation.
Totally.
It's poverty level, no education. People are starving to death.
They're raised in fear.
Right. And then when you are an adult male in Afghanistan, it's like, yeah, I don't really want to feed that kid anymore, and this guy says he'll do it, and then I don't have to worry about it anymore, and then if I want more kids to work so I don't have to work, I can have them. So it's just a bad situation, which we could help, but we're there for opium. We're not actually there to help. So
exactly.
We don't need to go down that rabbit hole any more than I already have.
It's
But I'm not
okay,
Islamophobic. Like I always say on Podcastrophe, do your own research, do your own opinions. You might end up agreeing with some of the shit that I have to say.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because you don't come off as a hateful person. I just heard you say your opinion, and you didn't get hyped. You didn't raise your voice. You didn't get energetic or try to push your agenda. You came at me with your word, man. And that's, again, back to the respect thing. We're just kind of going back to that respect thing.
Well, and I've actually had, throughout my travels, my world travels, I've met some very very devout followers of Islam and had very, very interesting conversations with them about all of modern religion is basically the same religion. It's the same business model. Christianity's getting dollar bills, and Islam's getting warriors of God, and Judaism's doing a little bit of everything. We're all doing the same shit. But I've had some really interesting conversations with people, and my dad. So my dad did 3 tours overseas, outside of Bosnia and Kosovo. So he did 3 tours in the Middle East, 2 tours in 2 tours in Pakistan, 1 tour in Afghanistan. And the first time that my dad went over there, he said, we've got to go over there and help those people. Cool, be safe. Come home safe. Don't do anything stupid. My dad comes back, and I talk to him about it. Because my dad and I are very open with each other. If my dad doesn't open up to a lot of people, but if my dad has something on his chest, he'll talk to me about it. And that's why I continue to do the same to him. But the second he was getting ready to go for his second tour of duty, and he said, you know, I still think we need to help those people, but there is a lot of fucking bad people over there. And his third tour in Afghanistan, he watched a group of terrorists hijack a bus full of children, and drive that bus into an embassy and blow it up. So 30, 40 kids on that bus, you know, just poof, gone. So after he came back from that tour, he's got PTSD pretty bad from a lot of the shit that he saw. But he said, you know, there's no good people over there anymore.
It's just the culture.
Well, and to see my dad go from extreme optimism to slightly less optimism, but still we're doing a good thing, to there's
full-blown
no hope
pessimism.
left. Yeah, all hope is gone. It's like, to do that to a guy like my dad, that's some serious shit. So
Totally. Okay, so we're gonna get back into your story now, and you've abandoned religion. You're kind of girlfriend to girlfriend in high school, and being kind of, as you say, a shithead. As she's been featured verbally several times on Podcastrophe, when do you meet Skylar? How does that go down? And does that meeting her start a cycle of change in you?
a little bit. So I met Skylar my senior year in high school, first day of school. I had known of her. One of the guys that I was kind of buddies with was dating her at the time, and you know, I had never thought anything about it. I had just went through 2 back-to-back really kind of shitty relationships, and I was single. You know, first day of school, you got to be single on the first day of school. You never know what's going to happen, right? So I'm sitting in a class called MAV TV. It was like our news and broadcasting class. I was an anchor and an editor and shit like that. So this 4'11" girl in like a cheerleading outfit, because there was like a pep rally shit that day or something. She had her cheerleading shit on and walks in, and I was like, whoa, who's that? And then I introduced myself immediately, and she wouldn't even fucking talk to me. And I was like, alrighty then. So, like, 3 weeks later, I had another girlfriend again. And I wasn't the most popular guy in school. I was friends with everybody, and I obviously wasn't the most attractive or athletic guy in school, but I was involved in a lot of stuff, and I always tried to make friends with everybody. And like I said, unless they disrespected me, and then, you know, I wanted to kill them. But I started to get buddies with one of her friends that was in the class, and I was working towards hooking up with her, and then I started to become friends with her, and then we just started to get to know each other better. And the guy that was dating her at the time was a total fucking dickbag. And one day, right after I was recently single again, I said, you know what, why don't you just break up with him? Well, I don't want to, or I want to, but, you know, we'll just
get my CDs. I don't want to give up my CDs.
Right. We'll get back together and blah, 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 blah. So I just kept working it for like 6 months. And I had like random girlfriends throughout that time, but, you know, I was just working it every day. And she would like run and talk to her friend like when I wasn't around and stuff about how, you know, how much she wanted to be with me, but I was an upperclassman, and, you know, I wouldn't ever give her the time of day. It's funny how that shit works out. But finally, I talked her into breaking up with that guy, and then like 3 weeks later, we started dating. And all but like 3 months, we've been together for almost 10 years.
Damn.
Yeah, we're married
10 years
now,
is tough, man.
Yeah. Been together for a fucking decade. It's a long time.
Yeah, it is, man. It is a long time. You know, and you guys are different people than when you first started this.
Yep.
Okay, so when you guys first got together, you said all but like 3 months. Is it like I don't know how to word this. Is it like rubber? Like you guys are just stuck together constantly, always doing things together? You like bonded you essentially fused into one being.
At first, we did, for sure. We dated for like 3 years. So I graduated in 2010. She graduated in 2012. We didn't move in together until 2014. Yeah, 2014 is when I finally moved out of my grandma's house. I was working at Tate & Lyle at the time. She was going through school. I was still helping my grandma do a bunch of shit. And then once she got on her feet, I finally flew the nest. So we moved in together. She was still going to school. And then, once we lived together, we finally realized that even though we like to do a bunch of shit together, we also like to be completely by ourselves. So that fast forward to where we're at now, that's why I bought the house that I did, because it has 2 separate living rooms.
Nice.
So when it comes time, I can go do my thing and she can go do her thing. And part of the reason, I have to give her credit because, I said it at the beginning of the show, I'm an asshole. But the almost 5 years that I was at Tate & Lyle, I was very difficult to live with. I was getting basically 3 hours of sleep a day, working 12 to 16 hours a day with shitty fucking people that did nothing but stab me in the back when I extended the hand of friendship, and they would shake my hand with one hand and stab me in the back with the other. And I brought all of my work stress home, which created stress at home, and then I would take all of that stress at home right back to work, and it just compounded. And I was miserable. But that during that time period, that's when we separated for a short period of time. I came home one day to our apartment, and I basically just told her to get the fuck out. I couldn't deal with it anymore. I needed to be by myself because I was basically cancerous to her. I was making her life miserable, so I didn't want to do that to her anymore. So we separated for a short period of time, and then a couple months later, we got back together, and then we got back together in September or October. So I went to that year that we separated, I went to my dad's for the 4th of July. I was there for 9 days. Did a lot of thinking. I was going to get back in shape, and I was finally going to enlist, and I was going to go do door kicking shit, and I couldn't do that with her. And I was a cancerous person, and it's like, you know what, it's time we just went our separate ways. So I came back from that trip knowing that, it was time to end it, and we did. And then a couple months later, I had met a few people, and I had casually dated a little bit. And I obviously wasn't over her. I'd been with somebody for 6 years, 7 years at that point. So I was still emotionally attached. And one day, I had gotten some of her mail, and I needed somebody to watch my dog, so I reached out to her, and I was like, hey, when I go to work on nights, will you come over and feed my dog? And she's like, yeah, I'll do that. Just being nice. And then we were right back into it shortly after that. So
it's interesting because you said a thing that is for real. 7-year itch. Mm-hmm. Happened in the 7th year. It's weird how relationships are tested the hardest in the 7th year.
Right.
Like, it's just strange. I mean, like, Sarah and I have been together 11 years. The 7th year, easily the hardest year. Mm-hmm. Easily. It's a mind fuck. Mm-hmm. Because you think it's a joke, but then you hear everybody else talk about it, and you're like, fuck, it's real, man. Like, what is up with that? I don't quite understand. So you guys get back together. You're still at Tate & Lyle for a short time longer there.
Yeah, I was at Tate & Lyle for pretty much 2 more years after
and
that.
Even during that, are you realizing it's the job that's made you toxic?
A little bit. That's when it started. Because originally when I started there, I was on C team. So they have 4 teams of people in 2 different parts of the facility. There's only 200 people that work there. There's 20 people on a team, and then management and all the other shithead people that don't do anything. But I was originally on C team. I had an opportunity to move to A team, so I was a part of the A team for almost 2 years. A guy on A team who was one of my good friends at the facility reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey man, we have an opening. I know you're miserable where you're at. Come over here with us. It'll be better." And for a long time it was. And then it goes back to my abrasive personality. I was always told by my mom's dad, say what you want to say what you mean to say, and don't fucking care what anybody else thinks about it, because your opinion is the only one that matters. And that's good advice to an extent, because it goes back to what my dad says about our family, is we have the ability to hurt people's feelings forever. And when you work in a really stressful environment like that, and you're with the same people all day, every day, the last 2 years that I worked there, each year I worked 1,000 hours of overtime. I was doing my 12 hours, doing 4 more hours, going home, showering, taking a nap, and going back at midnight to help with projects and shit like that, and then working another 16-hour day. I was burning the candle, the whole candle was on fire. It wasn't just each end.
The entirety of it is just a flame.
The whole fucking candle was ablaze. And I was trying to do all my hobbies that I enjoy, and I was trying to devote time to her and to my family, and I wasn't getting to be around for holidays because that place runs 364 days a year. But then, that old guy that I said told me we all justify what we do. He also told me that you can only step on somebody's dick so many times before they stomp on your dick. And that's some of the best advice I've ever got, because I was very abrasive. It's a different management system there. It's really hard to explain, but you basically don't have a boss. You are your own boss. So when you're in a meeting with corporate people and you
represent you.
Yep, and you're voicing unpopular opinions, the team, the other 19 people on that team are supposed to have your back. But if you're doing what I was doing and you're saying, really off-the-wall stuff like we need to organize and bring the union in here, you're not very well liked.
Oh, shit.
So, towards the end of my time there, I finally came to terms with, man, this job is killing me. I had gained a bunch of weight. Like I said, I was only getting 3 hours of sleep a day. I was sick all the time. I was pretty much sick all year long. My depression was getting worse and worse. My anxiety was getting worse and worse, which was making everything else worse. Making my attitude at work worse. I was negative and that's the bad thing about working in a manufacturing environment. When you have a group of people that you work with every day, all day long, and they're a group of negative people, you quickly buy into that, even if you don't want to. So
makes
I was
it
already
easier.
Yeah. It just makes the time go by faster. You have that camaraderie again. If you're not the positive person, then you fit in. Which is not the type of thing that I normally would do, but a man can only take so much, and they basically broke me.
And it's interesting to note, before you move on here, working a night shift at a place, working the graveyard shift is psychologically more taxing than you realize. We're meant to be asleep when it's at night. Like, our species needs rest when it's dark out and needs to be active when it's light out. It's just like how we're programmed. So when you burn the fucking whole candle and burn it to the fucking ground and you're working late, your mind starts to fuck with you, man. Everybody becomes your enemy. I know. And it's a fucked up thing to happen, because even when you're watching it and you're like, these people aren't my enemies, they're my fucking friends or my family or whoever, they become a problem because they're not living your reality.
That's right.
Without even knowing it, have switched realities. And it's hard. It's fucking hard to come back from that. Like, for real.
And what made it worse is I was switching from nights to days every 3 days.
Oh,
So,
yeah,
and
man.
there would
No
be-
way.
there
No
would be-
consistency.
You could never get used to it. We worked 4 to 4 or 12-hour shifts, so I would have to get up at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning to be at work at 4 o'clock. And, in 2014, I worked from November to March without having a day off. And at least half of those days were 16-hour days. It just broke me. It wore me down. And then I finally started to realize that I was in a toxic environment and I was just a number and the place didn't give a shit about me. And then, then I found out that we were going to have a kid. And it's like, and so backtrack a little bit. 2016, I proposed to my wife, my now wife, on Valentine's Day, and we consummated that engagement, and we made our kid that day. I've pretty much got it down to that day.
Science
and shit. Sometimes it do be like that, but so we found out we were having a kid, and then, I told everybody that I worked with, and I scheduled vacation around the time that the due date was, which, they were working with me. They said, we know this isn't going to be dead on. We're going to let you change and move your vacation, whatever. And I was like, cool. I'm with a good group of people. They're looking out for me. They're making sure that I can take care of my family. This is a good environment. So fast forward to November of 2017 or 2016. My wife calls me. I had already worked one night. I was getting ready for work on my second night. I just got out of the shower and she calls me, and the doctor's office that she works at is right above her OB's office. So just right up the stairs from each other. She calls me just to say my blood pressure spiked again. They're taking me down to meet with my doctor. They're probably going to induce labor. And I said, okay, cool. Text me as soon as you know, and I'll let work know, and then I'll be there. So she texted me like 5 minutes later and said, yep, we're having a baby today. And I said, okay, I'll grab all the shit and I'll be there. I called work, and I said, look, this is what's going on. And the guy that I was dealing with said, okay, man, don't worry about it. We'll start your vacation today. You'll have one extra vacation day at the end because you already worked a day. And, don't worry about anything. Forget about this place. Go be safe. Let us know if you need anything. And I was like, man, that feels good. Fast forward to while my wife is in labor, I shut my phone off. I turned my phone back on. I had 41 missed calls from my work saying that I needed to come in and go to work.
What?
Yeah. My fucking wife's in labor, and you're telling me that I need to come fucking to work. That's bullshit. It's how can you say that? And I have the mentality that family comes first. Work is a secondary thing. If you're telling me that I need to put work in front of my unborn child, then you can fuck off. And that day was the day that I knew I was going to leave that place. And then coming back from my vacation, they were trying to strong-arm me and
Hold on. Let's backtrack a little bit here. Wife's in labor. Skylar's in labor. You turn your phone on. You have 41 missed calls. Do you call them right away, and are you like, hey, fuck off, my wife's having a kid?
Nope.
What's the resolve there?
I just ignored it. I just turned my phone back off.
Like as if they never called. Fuck them.
Yep.
Brilliant. That's what I would have done. Same, exactly.
Because the motto at Tate and Lyle was if it's your day off and work calls you, you screen that call, because they can't force you to come into work if you don't answer the phone.
Yep.
So I already had that mindset, like, don't answer the phone. That's part of the reason I turned it off.
Just in case.
Just in case, because I had that feeling in the back of my mind.
I guess there's confusion. Did this guy not relay the message, or did they just not care? Or?
They just didn't care. They didn't give a shit.
What? After they told you they cared? That's awful.
That's the people I worked with. So fast forward, they're threatening to fire me and everything, and I was like, you know what? I'm just done. I fucking quit. And then
fire me.
Yeah.
No,
fire.
you can't, because I'm quitting.
That's right. So then I left and went to I took like 3 weeks to just kind of relax and get over the fact that I just left a very lucrative career. But I did it for the good of my family, and because my daughter was born in November and I lasted until May. And I worked a shit ton of overtime in that time. And I was watching my daughter grow up on my cell phone, and it's like, this ain't fucking
Fuck that.
right. Yeah, I couldn't get up at night and help. If Ruby was crying at night, Skylar had to get up and do it because I was only getting 3 hours of sleep anyway. So I can't go to work. And it was a dangerous job, too. I can't go do a dangerous job on an hour of sleep. It's a miracle that I could do it on what I was doing it. So that made me feel like even more of a piece of shit because she's having to do everything. So I fucking peace, I'm out. And I went to Subaru.
Okay, so the 3 weeks that you're off, is the first day of not doing fuck all the weirdest experience for you?
It was actually, normally it would have been, but I was used to having days off during the week when I wasn't working a bunch of overtime because we worked that 3 on, 3 off rotate.
Gotcha, yeah.
So it was just like, oh man, I'm not supposed to be at work today. It was just like one of my days off that I rarely had. So I enjoyed it.
So I guess really by like day 5 is what I should be asking. How were you at day 5?
Day 5 hit me pretty hard. It was a roller coaster of emotions. I was fucking mad at them. I was mad at myself. Like, why did I let it get to this point? What the fuck am I going to do? I just bought a house a couple months ago. I got married a week ago. Like, what the fuck did I do? It fucking, that month fucking sucked.
So you're the living meme of that dog in the house on fire.
Yes.
Everything is fine. Everything is just fine.
Right.
Like,
yep. That was me. 100% to a T.
So you take 3 full weeks off. As you're doing that, obviously you're not really off because you're looking for something else.
Yep. I was looking
and
for
you
another
find
job.
that Subaru has a temp opening, and the course of history is forever changed.
Yep.
Because if this moment doesn't happen in your journey, this conversation isn't happening.
That's right.
Fucking weird. And it's even weirder because now, I mean, we're here in 2018, and Subaru is officially just going to be a pit stop for you.
Yep. And I pretty much knew that it was going to be anyway. So backtrack a little bit to when I got the job at Tate & Lyle. I had already gone through all of the same staffing agency that I'm now leaving. I had already went to them for a job once before. I had figured out what my hire date at Subaru was. The electrician's apprenticeship that I'm getting ready to start on Monday, I had been accepted to that. I had been accepted to the Ironworkers Union. I had been accepted into that apprenticeship. And then I got the call from Tate & Lyle all in the same week. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do what can make me retire the fastest and make me the most money. And that was Tate & Lyle. And then it's funny how that works out because I leave Tate & Lyle, I go to Subaru. Now I'm leaving Subaru and going to the electrical apprenticeship all of those things, I could have done any of those from the start, and here I am back at the start doing it over again, but actually making the right decision this time.
Yeah, and now you're going to, because I mean at some point you're going to become a journeyman of doing all of this, and that's a amazingly lucrative career that you can take anywhere.
Yep.
You don't have to live in Indiana to do that job. You can live on the coast on California.
Well, I am a big fan of the Gulf Coast.
Ooh.
If I could be anywhere on the Gulf Coast, I would be happy. My wife, unfortunately, does not want to leave. She's getting more excited about the idea a little bit later in life, but right now we're here. We
fed
we
up
be
and
out
in
here.
Indiana.
Do what?
We're fed up and in Indiana.
She loves it here. I fucking hate it here. I always
It's
have.
a prison.
Yep. It's a prison on planet bullshit.
Yes, perfectly said. So okay, you've had a kid.
Yep.
How? I've had a lot of people who are dads on this show, and I've had like Chris from Kids for Sale on this show and whatnot.
I love their show.
Their show is fucking phenomenal.
I love
by the way.
their
Just
show, man.
Shout out to them every other Friday opposite this show on the Journey into Comics Network. Cheap Pop. But I don't think I've actually asked the question of like mentally and emotionally, what was your daughter's birth like for you? Like feeling the change that you've brought life into this existence, like you've created something that now will have to experience a totally different journey than you, and you can't change that.
So when Skylar called me and said, "Hey, I'm gonna have a baby today," I was running. I had literally just woke up like 45 minutes before that and took a shower after I had worked all night the night before, and I remember I had a really bad night that night. So I grab everything and I pack everything up and I fucking haul ass to the hospital. I might as well have had a police escort because I'm fucking hauling ass to the hospital, and I get there and it's like, all right, when's the baby going to be here? Probably tomorrow. Okay, anxiety was fucking at 11, and now you just knocked me back down to about a 4, but I'm still fucking freaked out.
Like your adrenaline's pumping, but
Right,
you're told that it's only a 3.
So, they dosed her with Pitocin pretty much all night long, but they weren't giving her enough. So, I've talked about my fucking qualms with the medical industry enough. I don't need to say any more on this podcast, but
check out Podcastrophe every Thursday, folks, on the Journey into Comics.
Yeah, you'll
Network,
hear
Tyler
me
will
fucking talk
definitely
about
be
the
talking
medical
about that.
industry. So they weren't giving her enough Pitocin, and then all at once they gave her too much Pitocin, and it's like, fuck, bam, the baby's gonna be here now. And then Skylar had her naturally and was struggling a little bit, so Skylar's OB decides to hook this suction cup thing to my kid's head. And I'm like, that head is really, really soft. Why are you hooking shit to it? I don't like this. So so it's a little suction cup thing, and it's got like a 3-foot long steel cable on it, braided steel cable. And she's putting all of her body weight, leaning back, trying to fucking jerk my kid out of my wife. And it's like, this is already terrifying enough. What the
now
fuck is happening?
Now it's a fucking horror movie.
Well, the fucking suction cup pops off my daughter's head and hits the doctor in the face.
Fucking
So
A. That's hilarious.
A little bit of comedic relief there. But so before that part, I'm holding my wife's leg and I'm staring at the wall. Fucking men in the 50s had it good. They didn't have to watch childbirth. They got to sit in the fucking waiting room and smoke cigarettes.
Is it done yet, Doc?
Yeah, right.
Bring my boy to me. Put him in my fucking arms.
So I'm holding the leg, and I'm like, eyes forward. Do not look back there. You don't want to see that. And at one point, the doctor said something to me, and I looked at the doctor. And I just glanced down at what was going down there, and I looked right back up to the wall. Everyone in that room stopped what they were doing. They quit paying attention to my wife, and they said, "Sir, are you okay?" And I said, "Yep, I'm good." They waited like that for a good 5 minutes just to make sure that I wasn't going to pass out.
Because you've officially seen some shit.
I've seen some shit now. People say that childbirth is a miracle. That was not a fuck. I want to have more kids. I don't want to witness that again because that was fucking terrifying.
Nightmare.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Ruby comes out healthy as can be. All of the doctors that my wife saw said that Ruby would be no more than like 6 pounds. She was an 8-pound, 11-ounce baby. She was a fucking tank. But healthy as can be. Babies come out and they're this white, creamy color, and it's fucking weird.
That's how it all starts.
Right. But it was just a fucking, it was such a cool experience because it's like terrifying, and then you're at the top of the spectrum for being terrified, and then all at once it's just pure joy because, all right, she's here now. And, there was more comedic relief, too, because the midwife that was there, like, grabbed the umbilical cord, shoved some EMT shears in my hand, and she's like, here, cut this. And I go to fucking cut the thing, and it just bends the blades over.
Oh, shit.
So I had to, like, in my mind, the Benny Hill theme is playing while I'm trying to cut this fucking umbilical cord. But, we only had to stay in the hospital for a day, and Skylar wasn't that worse for wear. And, there's this cool thing called the daddy stitch, which I recommend to everyone. They renovate that shit and make it like 2.0. But anyway,
You've officially thrown yourself off track. This is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I had to. It's important. People need to know about the daddy stitch. I did not know about it. And it's a great thing. There should be billboards for that shit. But yeah, Ruby was healthy, no issues. The nurses came in like that night. So Ruby was born at like 7 o'clock in the morning after we'd been there since like 3 o'clock the previous day. And they came in there that night and they're like, okay, trying to teach us how to be parents, which you can't teach somebody how to do that shit. You just got to figure it out.
And good luck.
Right, yeah. Make sure they're breathing, feed them, make sure they're not covered in shit. All right, check, done. We're a parent.
It's good enough.
Right, well, at first, that's really all you're doing. You're not doing anything other than that, than survival instincts, So... the nurse came in that night, and she's like, okay, do you want us to take her to the nursery? And my wife's like, sure. Let's get some sleep. And she was in the nursery for like 30 minutes before my wife had her brought back in there. And I don't blame her. I didn't want her to leave either. I felt like days of our lives somebody was going to break into the nursery and steal my kid and swap him with like a pug or something. You gotta throw the humor in there.
A pug?
Yeah, my wife loves pugs.
Okay, like a baby pug or like a full, just like an adult pug just staring.
A nasty fucking pug.
I think Frank the Pug from Men in Black.
That's my wife's pug's name, Frank.
That's amazing.
Named after Frank the Pug in Men in Black.
That's even better.
I
love it.
I hate that dog. But so we made it out of the hospital just fine and made it home, and we've been raising the little shithead that I have for a kid ever since.
Cool. It seems like you guys are doing a swell job.
A lot of people say that parenting is the hardest job that they've ever had, but it's like, obviously Ruby's not a teenager. I've dealt with that a little bit with my middle sister. I was trying to be the father figure for her for a while, and that wasn't fun. So I'm a little bit prepared for that. And then, my wife still acts like a teenager half the time, so I have to be her dad too, which is fucking weird. But
there was a sexual joke there. I totally passed on it. So
well,
sorry.
I set you up for it on purpose. I figured you would, but
pick your shots. Pick your shots.
So
we're a little classy here today.
I'm prepared for that. I think when we get to it, but like Ruby started walking extremely early. She started talking extremely early. She's above her age group and everything. Neither my wife and I neither one of us are very tall, but Ruby is one of the youngest people in her daycare class, and she towers above everyone.
Whoa. So
I think that she might have got some of that Swede that's in my genes there somewhere. She might be tall. So
Giantnetics.
Mm-hmm. But she's smart, and it's so cool. I've talked about it on Podcastrophe a lot. I wake up every day, and the one goal that I keep every day, other than not kill everyone around me, is
good goal.
Right. I mean, everyone should have that goal.
Fair enough.
But it's to learn something every day. I try and learn something new or relearn maybe new information about something that I had previously thought. Like simple shit like, why is Pluto not a planet?
It's fucked up. I don't trust it.
I mean, there's good science there on why it's not a planet. There's other shit that's bigger than Pluto surrounding Pluto, and it's not a planet,
That's true.
But anyway, not to get not to get into the Space Force. Yeah, I don't want to get into the Space Force.
We have
right now.
literally a whole nother podcast to do immediately with all these other topics we could discuss.
Right. But I wake up every day just trying to learn something new every day, and I've tried to kind of do that with her like every day, and it's awesome because she doesn't want to sit in front of the TV, she doesn't want to play with toys, she just wants to read books. And that's how I was for a long time when I was a little kid. So, I've tried to read her a little bit of The Hobbit, and obviously I read her all the kid books and shit, but if you don't pay attention to her for a minute, she gets quiet, and then you look down, and then she's trying to read a book to herself. That's extremely rewarding for me. Being a parent's cool, man.
It's cool because you're able to have self-reflection on like shit you did as a kid, and also go, oh, this is a cool teachable moment where I can I was a little shithead that did this thing, and maybe my parents didn't know how to deal with it and didn't think of it as a teachable moment.
Right.
I can now instill a different view and value right now and make the world a better place. But we're going to fast track a little bit here. So moving forward, you and Skylar obviously have Ruby. Everything's going swimmingly. You're working at Subaru. When do you get introduced to the word podcast? And was that before you met the Subaru crew, or because that's JIC training grounds? I'm not sure if you're aware, but our JIC proving ground is Subaru unofficially.
I had been a fan of a lot of sports podcasts before I started this part of my journey, because I'm still really into athletics. I'm not very athletic now, but I still love sports. And the big stuff like Joe Rogan's podcast, I've always liked his podcast. Not so much for Joe, but he's got some really interesting people as guests on his show. I rewatched on YouTube Neil deGrasse Tyson's episode 949 when he had him on.
Oh, that's so good. That's I think they did 2 hours and 50 minutes or something. It was a long ass show.
Yep, they actually, they could have kept talking, but they had to stop because he had a plane to catch. He had a red eye he had to get to. So his guests really shine in that. So I've always enjoyed his podcast. But so a little bit of backstory. I know Mike previous to Subaru. I know Blaine previous to Subaru. Just through mutual friends that we had. And I never really cared for Blaine. I never really cared for Mike back then. And then, I didn't recognize Blaine at first, but I recognized Mike right at first, and I didn't make it known that I knew who he was. And the first day that I was there, I was working with Brandon. We started talking about video games, and on our way out that day, he's like, hey, man, I have a podcast that I do with a bunch of other people, and it's really cool. You should check it out. You'd probably like it. And I was like, amateur podcast. Not because I'm above an amateur podcast, just because, especially at that time, I was so busy. I was starting a new job. I didn't know where the fuck my life was going at. I'm a parent. I don't have time for that shit.
This new guy is thrusting this thing in your face like he's a salesman.
Right. So fast forward a couple weeks, and, I'm starting to get in with everybody, and we're talking nerd shit, and we're having good conversations, and Blaine's talking about his podcast, and he's talking about who he's going to have on as a guest that week, and I was like, my second impression of Blaine, since I met him once before, was, God, this guy's a fucking douchebag.
Wait, that was the first or second?
That was the second impression. So the first impression of Blaine when I knew him previous was that he was a douchebag, and then the second impression was, yep, he's still a douchebag. And now we're best friends, but that's why you shouldn't judge people, folks. Get to know people. So Blaine and I got to talking, and we started talking about music and all kinds of shit. And it's like, yeah. And he kind of hinted about me maybe me being a guest on his podcast, and I kind of play hard to get. I was like, maybe I'll do it. See if I have time, you know. And fast forward a couple weeks, and I was on that inaugural episode, and I had heard him tell Brandon before, like, I think I want Tyler to be my co-host, but I pretended I didn't hear him. And then one day he's like, man, I need a co-host. And I said, do you want me to be your fucking co-host, dude? And he's like, well, yeah, we'll plan for this, like, here. I really want you to be my co-host. And that day, I'm pretty sure I told everybody, like, hey, I'm Blaine's co-host now. So I brought the cat out of the bag. But so I never thought that a year from that point on that I would be actually doing podcasts. I've always, you know, like I said, I've always had a lot of shit to say, but I've always just kind of kept it to myself unless I can trap somebody in a room and make them listen to me.
Hell yeah. But now you're like full blown in this, man. You guys do great shows. I love tuning in. People should definitely do that. If you're not listening to Podcastrophe every Thursday, I don't understand it. And also you guys like do the live stream thing, which is innovative on the network. We don't have any other show that does it like that at all. You guys you make me jealous because that's what I want, is to have that same kind of thing, because I'm listening to your podcast and you guys are like, oh, so-and-so said this and let's react to him right now on the show. And I'm like, fuck, that's so cool. Like, I need that in my world, you know? So you guys are innovative and I love it. And it was really cool because you never know when people say, hey, I'm going to bring a new person into the fold of this thing, what can come of it. That person might have a whole different vision and make you not want to be a part of what you're doing, and you have a whole different journey.
Yeah, you never know what to expect.
And so you coming into the fold, you know, I'm not really apprehensive because it's weird because I have been exposed to Blaine in small increments, so I never really got that, oh, this guy is a douchebag. It was kind of like, here a little bit, here a little bit, here a little bit, here a little bit, and then I'm like, oh, he's not really a bad dude. He's just awkward as fuck and doesn't know how to handle it, like, which is really what it is.
Well, so work Blaine is totally different than outside of work Blaine.
Oh God, I bet too.
He has a totally different demeanor. If it's not like if you work there with us, he would be the same. But like if he's interacting with people that aren't us, he has a totally different demeanor. It's fucking funny. It's funny to watch.
Shit, yeah. But it's just cool because Blaine brought you in, and I've always just championed you as a podcaster because you are phenomenal. You know what you're saying. As we've talked about this whole episode, I respect the fuck out of you.
Appreciate that.
So I'm just glad that you've shared your journey so far with us. And I feel like there are probably avenues we could travel down, countless rabbit holes of stories and things you experienced in your traveling days, which we can save for another one because we are rocking a 2 hour and 11-minute episode right now, and it feels like it's been 15 fucking minutes.
Yep.
So, I mean, is that kind of your life too? I feel like you unintentionally always have great conversation that makes it go long. Like, Tyler's on the podcast, expect for fucking 3 hours at least.
I have a tendency to ramble, and I hate that I do it because I always apologize for doing it. But like I said earlier in the show, I always have something to say about everything, and that's not necessarily a good thing. But now that I'm not negative and not mad about everything all the time, I think it is a little bit of a positive thing because sometime, you know, we lost Anthony Bourdain a couple weeks ago.
Fucking sucks.
Which is tragic. We lost Chris Cornell and Chester back to back. We keep losing these really influential people in our lives too soon and the wrong way.
Bowie, Prince, and Lemmy.
Yep. Yeah. The fucking trifecta there.
Man, and that was in like a 4-month time frame.
Mm-hmm.
Bowie and Lemmy back to back, and like 2 or 3 months later, Prince died.
Yep.
Unbelievable. 2016 fucking sucked.
But you know, sometimes I at least think in my head that maybe through my somewhat incoherent ramblings that I talked to somebody long enough that it might have slightly diverted them from that path. A couple weeks ago on the show, you know, I talked about my battles with depression and anxiety, and how at one point in my, actually more than one point in my life, I was ready to end it. You know, I had every intent, and then I came up with the idea that if I could just break it down into time, you know, time's a big theme with me. If I can go the next 15 minutes, then that means I can go the next hour. And if I can go the next hour, that means I can go the next 5 hours, and 8, and then 12, and then I can go a whole day. And then if you can win those small battles and find someone to talk to, find someone to talk to, find a way to just kind of, I don't want to say cope because that's not the right word. That's not painting it in the right light. But if you can find a way to justify just hanging on for a little bit longer, then eventually you'll get to a point like me where it's like, okay, I've been where you're at. I can connect with you. I'm not telling you how to live. I'm not telling you why you shouldn't do what you set out to do. But here's why I didn't do it, and here's why I don't regret the decisions that I've made. I watched a pretty powerful video on Facebook yesterday, and I shared it about a guy who jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge and he survived. He's one of like 30 people total who have made that jump and actually survived. And he travels around the U.S. now, like as a motivational speaker. And he said the same. He said that the one thing that ties him together with all the other survivors of the Golden Gate Bridge is the moment my hands left the railing, I regretted it. So, suicide prevention is a big thing in my life. You're taking the out for yourself, and that's great that you don't have to feel that pain anymore, but you're causing so much pain in the act that it doesn't make it right.
Yeah, the wave of darkness and pain that you'll leave everyone else can become... It can actually create a chain effect and cause other people to go down that same unfortunate path.
And you know, if you survive, like that guy said, you know, it created so much strife in his family because now every time the phone ring or his dad's phone rings, his first thought is my son alive? You know, so it creates lasting emotional trauma for family that didn't have it initially. So, I kind of forgot where I was going with that.
It doesn't matter because I agree with you that, you know, suicide prevention and being able to talk about it and having discussions in the open about how people are feeling and whatnot.
That's where I was going. Go ahead.
It matters, you know? Mm-hmm. It is a thing that needs to happen because we as a society are already in a frail mental state by the way things are run and operated around us that we can't control, that are well outside of the reins of our control. So the best thing we can do is to learn coping mechanisms to survive. And
you never know. Like we walk down the street every day, and you never know that just by saying hi to somebody, that might be the moment that they're like, okay, I can make it a couple more minutes. You know,
absolutely.
Instead of going over here and jumping off this bridge, I'm gonna go sit on that park bench and I'm gonna say hi to the next person that walks by me,
and smoke a joint.
Yeah, right. You know, do anything, do something other than make that kind of mistake. And if my incoherent ramblings can deter someone for 10 more minutes, then that's enough for me.
Man, I feel like I just keep lining up these really awesome interviews. Lauren was a great interview, and she has a great story of survival. Your story of survival is incredible. The things you've had to endure, again, is unimaginable, man. I just, loss is very real in my life right now. I'm going through some stuff, and just getting your perspective is like almost, it's almost calming. It's like, oh, well, it could be a fucking hell of a lot worse, and I'm grateful that the situation I'm currently in is as not bad as it can be, whatever the fuck that means.
It's bad to say, but it can always be worse. You know,
absolutely.
You got to look
100%.
for the positives in every situation. So
totally, eternal optimist for life, man. That's the way I am. But
try to
before
be
we
anyway.
Yeah, try to be anyways. But before we get out of here, as always, I'll do the plugs, let you guys know where you can check shit out. As always, you can get the Journey into Comics Network at journeyintocomics.com. You get this show, The Voice of Survival, every other Friday, opposite Kids for Sale, also on Fridays. But you also get all the other shows on the network, from Journey into Comics to Podcastrophe to The Pull Report to Foodies Watching Movies to Adulting Ain't Easy and Brews with Dudes and this show. Did I miss one? I feel like I missed one. I fucking missed one, didn't I?
I thought you got them all.
I think I got them all. I think I did it. Okay, cool. I feel better about myself because I was terrified that I ruined that. But anyways, you can
know
always
how bad
check us
I
out.
am at plugs.
Well, nah, not really. You can check us out on all the different podcasting platforms, whether it's iTunes, Podbean, Stitcher Radio, Google Play Music. We are now on Spotify. Search Journey into Comics Network. You get all those shows, one RSS feed, a new show every day of the week coming at you with exclusive content there. But even more exclusive content on our Patreon at patreon.com/Journey into Comics, where you can give us $1, get early access, or give us $3, get exclusive content and early access, meaning as soon as the podcasts are done being edited, they get right into your ear before release day. We do have a release schedule that's pretty simple, pretty basic and easy to follow. Some shows are every week, other shows are every other week. Basic. But we hope to see you guys there. Tyler, thanks so much for coming on today, man.
Thanks for having me on, man. I'm glad we finally got to do it. This has been months in the making.
Months in the making, and also it's cool to know that we can definitely do this on any other kind of podcast we want and just be, it was great.
I definitely want to be on JIC in the next couple months.
How about there's this, we're going to just spoiler alert here, there's this event called LaFiCon happening.
Yep.
And for Journey into Comics 200, I was thinking about bringing all of these cool people who are part of my network to be a part of that show.
Awesome.
So, do you want to be one of my special co-hosts for the 200th episode of the show?
Hell yeah.
Good. Okay, great. It's a date. It's done. Fucking book it. It's there. We got it. But anyways, folks, thank you guys so much for checking out this week's episode of The Voice of Survival. This episode 23. I have been your host, Nate.
I've been Tyler.
And thank you guys so much for listening. See you later.